The military training preparing Princess Leonor for the crown. Princess Leonor is the future queen of Spain, but before she inherits a crown, she's being taught something far less glamorous: how to follow orders, how to lead under pressure, and how to serve something bigger than herself. Why? Because Leonor isn't simply preparing to become a royal figurehead. Spain's constitution gives the monarch an important role in relation to the armed forces, and that means the military training Leonor is receiving today could become highly relevant to the woman she eventually becomes. But here's the fascinating part. Leonor isn't being trained to become a soldier. She's being trained to understand the responsibilities that could one day come with being queen, and the lessons she's learning now could stay with her long after the uniform is gone. Why is Leonor in military training? For most people, military training would have nothing to do with their future career. But Leonor's future is different. She was born as the heir to the Spanish throne. That means her preparation has to cover areas that most people would never encounter. She needs to understand Spain's institutions. She needs to understand the Constitution. She needs experience representing the country. And she needs to understand the armed forces. That is one reason her military education is so significant. She's not preparing for a conventional career. She's preparing for a constitutional position that carries responsibilities across Spanish public life. And military training gives her an experience that a classroom alone cannot provide. The crown and the armed forces. There is an important constitutional reason behind this. Spain's constitution establishes the king as the supreme commander of the armed forces. Eventually, that responsibility will pass to Leonor when she becomes queen. Of course, being supreme commander doesn't mean the monarch personally makes every military decision. Spain is a parliamentary democracy, and military policy operates within its constitutional and governmental framework. But a future monarch still needs to understand the institution she may one day represent. And that's where Leonor's military education becomes much more than a symbolic gesture. She's gaining first-hand experience of military life. She's learning its culture. She's experiencing its discipline, and she's developing an understanding of what service actually means. What military life can teach a future queen? Military training is built around discipline. There are schedules, standards, rules, responsibilities, teamwork, and consequences. Those lessons can be valuable for anyone, but imagine how important they could be for someone who may eventually become head of state. Leonor will one day be expected to perform her responsibilities regardless of whether the day is easy or difficult. There may be moments when she is tired, moments when she is under enormous public pressure, moments when the country expects reassurance, and moments when she has to represent Spain during difficult circumstances. Military training cannot prepare someone for every possible future crisis, but it can teach habits that may help: discipline, composure, and responsibility. Learning that leadership isn't about privilege. There's another lesson here that is easy to overlook. Royal life comes with privilege. Leonor was born into one of Europe's most famous families, but military training puts her into an environment where privilege alone doesn't get the job done. You have to train, you have to perform, you have to learn, you have to work with others, and you have to meet expectations. That's important, because leadership isn't simply about having authority. Real leadership also involves understanding the people you're responsible for. A future queen needs to know what service feels like from the perspective of the people serving the country, and military training can provide that perspective. Why teamwork matters. One of the biggest misconceptions about leadership is that the person at the top does everything. In reality, the opposite is often true. The person at the top depends on an enormous network of people. For a future queen, that could include government officials, diplomats, advisors, military leaders, members of the royal household, and countless others. Leonor therefore needs to understand teamwork. She needs to know how to listen, how to communicate, how to trust specialists, and how to recognize that leadership doesn't mean knowing everything. Sometimes the strongest leader is the person who knows when to listen to someone with greater expertise. Military training can reinforce exactly that lesson. Military training in university. And this brings us back to Leonor's wider education. Her military training isn't happening in isolation. It is one part of a much larger preparation. University can provide academic knowledge. Military training provides practical experience. Official engagements teach public representation. Constitutional education teaches her the limits and responsibilities of the crown. Each piece adds something different. Think of it as building a foundation. The academic side helps Leonor understand ideas. The military side gives her experience with discipline and teamwork. The royal side teaches her how to represent an institution. And together, those experiences can prepare her for the extraordinary responsibility waiting in her future. It's also about Spain's place in the world. There's an international dimension too. Spain is a NATO member and works closely with allied countries. Its armed forces therefore operate within a wider international security environment. For a future head of state, understanding that world can be extremely useful. Leonor may eventually meet foreign leaders. She may visit allied countries. She may attend military ceremonies. She may represent Spain at important international occasions. Understanding the armed forces gives her another perspective on Spain's role beyond its borders. and that could become particularly valuable as she develops her future identity as a head of state. What kind of queen could this create? Now we reach the most interesting question. Could military training actually influence the kind of queen Leonor becomes? We can't know for certain. Her reign is still in the future, and people change throughout their lives. But the experiences she is receiving could become part of her leadership style. Perhaps she becomes known for discipline, perhaps for calmness under pressure, perhaps for a strong connection with Spain's armed forces, or perhaps the lessons simply become part of her character without defining her publicly. The important point is that Spain isn't waiting until Leonor becomes queen to begin preparing her. The preparation is happening now. Why this matters to the public? For Spaniards, the preparation of the future monarch matters because the monarchy's future will eventually depend on the person wearing the crown. King Felipe has his own experience and leadership style, but Leonor will eventually face a different Spain. The country will change, technology will change, political debates will change, international challenges will change, and the expectations placed on the monarchy will change too. Leonor therefore needs more than knowledge of royal tradition. She needs experiences that help her understand modern Spain. Her military education is one piece of that preparation. The question that remains, but there's something we still don't know. What will Leonor actually take from all of this? We can see the training, we can see the official appearances, we can see the educational path, but we cannot know exactly how these experiences will shape her privately. That's something only time will reveal, and perhaps that's what makes watching her journey so fascinating. We're not watching a finished monarch, we're watching someone become one. In conclusion, Princess Leonor isn't being trained to become a soldier. She's being prepared to become something even more unusual, a future queen who understands the meaning of service. The uniform will eventually come off. The training exercises will become memories. The military years will eventually belong to the past. But the lessons discipline, teamwork, leadership and responsibility could remain with her for decades. Because when Leonor eventually inherits the crown, Spain won't simply be looking at the princess who grew up in the royal palace. It will be looking at a woman shaped by years of preparation. And that preparation is happening right now. The crown may still be in the future, but Leonor's journey toward it has already begun. And the next chapter could reveal just as much about the future queen, her university life, her education, and the knowledge she'll need to lead a country without ever becoming its politician.